Welcome to our Tech Talk on boosting your bottom line with better business management. My name is Arlen Schweiger. I'm managing editor of CE Pro. And here today on our panel, we're very fortunate to have John Toscano, an integrator with AAMI in Florida, and David Pirtle from our sponsor today, ConnectWise, whose booth is actually just out to the left, booth number 613. So when this is done, you guys can all make a beeline over to ConnectWise. But we want to thank everyone for coming out today, and also our audience on Facebook Live. We're live streaming this today, and we're going to have an archived video of it online as well, so that people will be able to check it out. So thanks. Good morning, guys. Just to start, we want to know a little bit more about you. So, John, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about AAMI.
AAMI is a 25-year systems integration company. Obviously, we didn't know systems integration 25 years ago, but we went from being a security-only company to a full integration company in the Florida market. We got the whole west coast of Florida. We have 5 offices and 280 employees. And we've continued to grow in the markets of network management, controlled security, and asset protection.
What are some of the hotter technologies for you guys to install these days?
Full home integration. I mean, obviously, with the introduction of Alexa more in the mainstream, Google Home, it's allowed us to introduce our commercial side integration systems into the residential market. And then also, it's allowed us to introduce home management of the network. Obviously, we all connect to the network, and the security aspects of that is kind of something new in the residential market, and they're much more aware of it.
Yeah, they're asking about it. That's what
constantly.
Everyone's worried about that.
Well, the news is my best advertisement. Every time someone gets hacked in some form or manner, they are introduced to needing a firewall in a house, a more readily managed system to their network. Yeah,
so just another great offering for integrators,
Absolutely.
Certainly. And David Pirtle from ConnectWise. I know certainly a lot of CE Pro readers have probably become pretty familiar with you guys, but for those who haven't yet, can you tell us a little bit about your company and also what differentiates ConnectWise from some of the competitors?
Sure. ConnectWise is a software company based out of Tampa, Florida. We have offices in the Seattle and Charlotte areas, as well as London and Sydney, Australia. We're just shy of about 1,000 employees. We have a suite of 4 core software platforms that we offer to the market, and then about 300 or so third-party integrations that have built integrations from their tool into our platform. I think what makes us, one of the things that makes us different, we've really tried to take a holistic end-to-end approach with developing a software that helps businesses take everything from a lead to a sales opportunity to a quote, and then from winning that quote to ordering that product, scheduling that project, scheduling out those service techs, allowing them to access their calendars and those tickets from a mobile device. And then ultimately managing all that, closing it out, invoicing, billing for it. Things that are taking people 5, 6, 7 different solutions. Maybe they're using Excel spreadsheets and SharePoints to try and manage all this, and really bringing it into one system that everyone lives in, everyone breathes in, everyone has accountability and information access. That also breeds great reporting. So I think really taking that approach and then really relying on our partner base to inform our development, to inform our roadmaps, to inform our strategic thinking. I think to meet our partners and collaborate with them, if you go to the different events and groups that we hold, it's a super open sharing group. They really don't hesitate to share their successes and their failures and try and help other business owners navigate those waters. It's just something that I've seen be a little bit unique in the market, different shows I've been to. It's just really cool to see them interact and share and really try and build each other up. Just something unique I haven't seen a ton of places.
So we have a success story to tell today with John and his company. Before we get to John though, could you also tell us a little bit about what kind of customers you cater to? And
Sure.
It's residential, commercial, and any size, basically?
It's really anybody at the end of the day that sells services, supports technology, be that more of a traditional integrator, residential, commercial, even going over into the IT side with different services that they're offering, different cloud services that people are starting to provide now with Office 365 and managing that for people. So it's really anybody that has people, processes that they need to merge into a service delivery model. As far as the size, I mean, I would say probably a good 50% of our partner base is 4 to 10 people companies. You know, we probably have another half that starts to get up to 20, 40, 50, 200, 300, 400 companies. So there's a path to growth. This isn't something that, you know, you're going to outgrow. I think that's the benefit. But as far as a partner base, it really does scale that gambit from smaller 2, 3, 4 person shops all the way up to larger multi-site organizations.
Yeah, and I think, John, kind of as a segue into your investigation of solutions and the way that you came to be connected to ConnectWise, I think the growth and growing pains that come with it were part of that. So if you could tell us a little bit about where your company was and what led you basically to start looking as a business owner into these kinds of solutions to, you know, streamline your operations, enhance, you know, your business management.
Yeah, I think everyone in this room and everyone in the building, as you get on the path of starting a small company and then growing the company, you develop challenges that you may not recognize at the time of growth, which generally leads from having a one location operation, maybe a few employees. You're able to control inventory, you're able to control process. We're a very process-oriented company, but we're using multiple platforms to deliver our end results, and that becomes convoluted as you grow and you add more staff. What we did is we made a decision that we were using 4 different software platforms to, in essence, produce the process for the end result of making a profit. I mean, that's why we're in business. But we were losing things in that process, whether it be communication to the client, communication amongst team members. There was a lot more hands-on across the teams than we needed to be.
So there were just kind of breakdowns in general that needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, if someone didn't read an email or communicate to the warehouse, if sales didn't document things perfectly, it wound up that one person would have to pick up on the errors and then run around and see each person and gather them, have a team meeting for things that really should have been simplistic to run your business. And I think we all don't stop during growth to look at that. It's my job as a CEO of the company to say, okay, hold on. We're doing great as a 1 or 2 office operation, but now we're 25 years old, we're using 4 different software platforms, we're using a voice over IP phone system, but we don't have a software that joins all of it together. So we started down the path of looking at everybody that's in this building and even outside. We actually led ourselves to ConnectWise not because of a trade show. We started looking outside of that, looking for the best management software that could go through. So ours is pretty simple. They use the term, which is great. We go from the opportunity to the proposal, to the procurement of the product, to delivery to the client, to follow-up. Then future marketing, to go back to our existing client base to generate sales. And that was the framework that we actually went out to look at software companies. And during that process, we were able to quickly form a relationship with ConnectWise, understand where they're at today, where they're going, and then are we on the same roadmap as them? Because one of my concerns is when you're 25 years old, it's a big undertaking. And we needed to make sure that our company was going to benefit from it, but we weren't going to outgrow our software company, and vice versa. Our software wasn't going to become so complicated that we couldn't run our day-to-day operation.
How long did the whole process take in terms of vetting various vendors, and then when you started to decide what things you actually needed to address, and then as you got going into the phasing in the product or the implementation, what would you say that time frame was like? And in talking to some other ConnectWise dealers, maybe you can add to this, David, in terms of how does that vary among different size integrators?
So what we did is we sat down first with the team. At the end of the day, if you can't get your entire company to buy into the process of what you're about to undertake, it's not going to be successful. You're going to run into issues. So that took about 6 months. It sounds like a long time, but when you have 5 locations and the amount of employees we have, and we have our own monitoring facility that runs 24 hours a day, we needed to find out what our team felt the problems were, not just what management did.
Yeah, what kind of questions did they raise during that time?
Well, I mean, the number one question was simple. What is this going to do to day-to-day operations as we're installing the process of new software? And are we going to come to a screeching halt? Are we going to have internal issues? What do we need to do to be prepared for this? What kind of training and allocations of time are you going to give us to become prepared for this?
Okay.
The next was, is the software going to make our process better that allows us to be more empowered as employees of the company to make decisions without having to go to a management or have 5 or 6 people approve the process? And then the last is, where are we going to go with this in the future, and how are we going to continue to use it as we grow?
And did basically the employees understand kind of down the line just the impact, what you guys were looking to do, and possible benefits, or was that something that you really had to spell out to them?
I'd love to sit here and say yes, they understood, but the answer is no. Our implementation process with ConnectWise was over a year or so, and that's more because I have to take my hat off to them. They forced myself and my immediate team, and then even the newest person on the company's roster, to reevaluate. They go through and ask you so many questions during the process that it makes you stop and say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna get the most out of this. So instead of me rushing to get this software deployed, I'm actually gonna go through the whole process with them. What I found myself doing was sitting down at their office in Tampa and saying, well, okay, someone that's not in my industry, what do they do in this? What's their best business practice? And then reevaluate it and say, you know what, I want to install that in my company. We don't do that yet. Or this is what we do. And then I'd get feedback from them. You know what, that's really smart. We think that's a really good business practice, and we like the way you're thinking.
Okay, so it was very consultative.
It was. It was a team effort bringing it to fruition. And then as we started down that path, we started in what they call their sandbox environment, and we started learning new things even about our own staff and the processes we wanted to deliver at the end.
And David, following up to that, aside from what John's company went through, what are some of the typical things that you go through? I don't know if you could speak to typical timelines, but what are the common questions that you get from integrators who start this process and then go all the way through it?
Sure. I think some of it comes from sort of what's going on today. So some of the things we do, people are maybe a little more down that path. They have some systems in place, some softwares, maybe 4 or 5 different things that they're using, but they have some established processes and some systems, so they kind of like, okay, well, I'm already paying this, I'm already doing this, I can consolidate it all into a single pathway. That's maybe a quicker process than there's some companies who are coming out of very manual, labor-intensive, paper, spreadsheet type of processes that maybe it takes a little more time to evaluate, to kind of even understand how a software would start to apply to their business. And then I would echo what you said as far as a deployment, being successful by saying, okay, maybe what's my biggest pain is my billing and my finances. I want to get that in place first. And then maybe I want to spread out to my project management and my service management and start tracking time differently, and then maybe start to build in sales and CRM and start to put it together, like you said, over a period instead of approaching it and trying to do it too much, too fast, too quick. And then you don't know what you don't know. You don't know the system as well as you could to maximize that long-term success, because it is about kind of putting a little bit, a couple times a day, a few times a week into the system over time to really tweak it to your business so that you're eliminating all those manual tasks that you could be automating. That's where we find a ton of employee time and a ton of the ROI that goes into something like this comes from, is just the hours and hours and hours that add up of these laborious tasks that could be easily automated with a true platform like this.
I was going to ask you if you could go, if you could cite any specific tasks or things that, integrators, obviously, a lot of them come into this business from the tech background, but not the business background.
Sure.
what are some of the common things that you would say, maybe get overlooked where, they really are not necessarily leaving money on the table with a project, but just in general, little things kind of add up where they could certainly be more profitable. And
yeah, I think the things that add up the most are just the dollars that aren't getting converted out of work that you're actually doing. You're out there, your techs are out there, they're doing the work, they're putting the time, but because of inaccuracies and tracking and notes and detail, you're only billing for maybe the 2 hours you promised instead of the 4 hours that it actually took, or you're not billing for those extra cables that you had to use on the job. And it's missing those little things that over time, that $20, $30, $50, $70, that's the profit that we really want to focus on. We want to get people thinking away from a top line and actually being able to see what their profits are, so they can make informed decisions about their business and where they're putting their resources and what employees are maximizing their time. It's so hard to see what you're actually making when you have all these different systems and processes in place. You bring it all together, you have accurate numbers, and now you actually have reporting that you can use to make good decisions.
Okay. So John, you have several, like you said before, several offices, several employees. I imagine a lot of that stuff was kind of falling through the cracks and adding up. What can you tell us about metrics that you use? Anything to tell you that, all right, we invested this money into this solution. How do we know that it's actually working?
Well, I think to go off of what David was just saying, I think when you're in business in the start, you don't think about that extra hour you're spending on something as an owner, because you're saying, well, I don't have an hourly cost to myself. And as you grow, you do have hourly costs to everything you do, and you have to remember that. So by using the software, we start to track everything from design to how much admin touch things. You kind of tend to forget about that. You remember the installer when they're on site, but what did it take to procure the product? What did it take to procure the project, bring it to fruition, and get through the back end? And I think most integrators would be guilty of this, including my company. We want the end result to work, so we'll reach into our truck and grab the extra cable or the extra baling, throw the part in, and not look at the cost that we just added in. And then we don't resolve that with our sales team. I'm guilty of it. I come from the integrator side, from installing literally in the field to then doing software and then eventually running the company completely. So what I used to be is I'd be on the site and I need an extra mount, an extra screw, security world, an extra motion, a contact. You threw it in. You knew that had cost, but at the end of the day, you were trying to get the system up and running. At the end, you didn't go and reconcile that to know at the next job when you rebid it, hey, you know what, I need to do this differently. I need to look at this cost factor. We also look at it from the standpoint of how much does our time is used to design the project, deploy it. We already know what the installation team's doing. We do a really good job of tracking that. But how much after the fact? How many hours do we spend after we've deployed the solution in the customer's home or the business? Do we spend getting them through that process to feel comfortable that we're not having repeat calls? A lot of times we pick up the phone and we answer things over the phone, or we log in remotely, and we don't keep track of that time. We don't think of that as a cost.
Right.
The larger you get, the more you're looking at your bottom line, you're gonna realize how much cost you have in that. And when you minimize those truck rolls, and you start minimizing that expense, you start saying, hey, you know what, maybe on the front end I need to spend an extra hour here to gain 5 hours of real profit on the back end.
Or maybe you're doing it so much that you say to yourself, maybe we need to be get some RMR out of all these truck rolls. And
I think what their software does too is it allows you to monitor specific employees, so you can see who's efficient. One of the things I was really impressed in is they have a dashboard system that allowed me to take out as a glance and look at the efficiency rating of each employee. So now I know what person in the company is really efficient to the company's process and who isn't, and give the additional training to that specific employee.
So what surprised you the most then, in terms of just looking at all the data, everything that you now had? What were some of the things that sort of made you raise your eyebrow?
So the two things that we, and I'll be upfront with this, we didn't do well is our sales team was spending way too much time procuring a job. They didn't know when it was time to move on and when it was time to say, hey, we're not the company for this particular client because we keep going back to it. through their sell tool, it's very nice to see how much the clients looked at the proposal, where they've gone through it, when they've reaccessed it. And we were spending too much time doing follow-up that we could automate. We can make the initial voice phone call, but then our system can do the follow-up emails to say, welcome, how's your service? Do you have questions? That type of thing, and use our sales team to be more productive. The other side was procurement of product when it came out of the field. If we go and we install a receiver and we need an RMA and we need to send it back, we were good at pulling one off the shelf because it's a brand new install, out of the box problems. We put the new product in. We weren't good about getting that product back, getting credit for it, getting it brought back into the warehouse. And so we weren't really good at that process. I think the bigger you get, the bigger your warehouses are, the easier it is to go take a new one off the shelf. That process kind of falls through the cracks.
Yeah. So one last question here. We've kind of reached our time limit, and after this, we'll have you guys do some Q&A as well if you have some questions. But just one last thing in terms of what advice would you leave then for other integrators who are looking into, not just ConnectWise, but business management software in general? Maybe one or two pieces of advice for the process.
Number one, be open-minded. You have inefficiencies within your company, and sometimes when you run it, you don't want to recognize those, and get your entire team involved, from the person that just started a week ago to the person that may be with you. Like I have people that have been with me 24 plus years, and be open-minded. Let the team talk freely, because if you don't, you're not going to get the most out of the process. And the second time is be prepared, from being the CEO of the company to being the installer, to invest time with ConnectWise or any other software provider to get the most out of the software. The biggest thing I hear, because I'm also the chairman of the state licensing board in Florida, is, oh, I don't like that software. And I'll say, why? And they'll say, well, because it doesn't do this, this, this. Well, it does. You just didn't take the time to learn the software. You made a large investment in the software and you thought it was just automatically going to do everything for you. So invest the time, and have your team invest the time.
Yep. Well, thank you again for the Tech Talk. David Pirtle from ConnectWise, John Toscano from AAMI. Again, ConnectWise is in booth 613, right out there to the left.
Right over there.
And we would like to thank everyone for coming out. Enjoy the rest of the show.